Supreme Court Justice. Before I make that announcement, I want to thank retiring Justice Charles Wiggins for his amazing service. I know this justice a bit personally. I can tell you that it's not just his bow tie we're going to miss. We're going to miss his gentility and his insights and his really connection to the community. And I wish him well. Thank you, Justice Wiggins. To fill his vacancy on the state Supreme Court, I'm pleased to announce the appointment of Judge G. Helen Whitener of the Pierce County Superior Court. Her name and her talents are not new to me. I appointed soon-to-be Justice Whitener to the Pierce County Superior Court in 2015. And then and now she has distinguished herself in a relatively rapid period of time as a true outstanding talent in our judicial sphere. Originally from Trinidad, Judge Whitener moved to the United States as a teenager, went to Baruch College in New York, and obtained her law degree from Seattle University. As an attorney and a judge, her work has inspired so many. And when I asked her her number one achievement of something to be proud about, she told me something that the community also recognizes, and that is her ability to inspire young people in their individual pursuits in so many ways. This is a community-minded judge and will be a community-minded justice. When some of her colleagues heard about her appointment, they literally, shout might be too strong a word, but showed their very loud approval for this appointment. The President of the State Bar Association described the judge as tenacious, fearless, and a compassionate advocate for human rights. The President of the Tacoma-Pierce County Bar said that our loss will be the state's gain. As a former practicing attorney myself, I always look to those lawyers who labor in the vineyards of justice and what they think. The president of the Association for Justice, Spokane attorney John Allison described her as outstanding, a dynamic person with a tremendous work ethic and great insights to bring to the bench. She is the first immigrant-born judge on the Pierce County Superior Court. I believe she is the first woman who is black in our community, and I'm so excited to see her enter this realm. I have to tell you, she does have certain characteristics that are troublesome on occasion, and I just want to share that with you. I spoke to her spouse, former Sergeant Major Lynn Rainey of the United States Army, who revealed to me that this justice has a terrible habit of getting up at 2 or 3 in the morning and doing a lot of work. And that's something that former Sergeant Major Lynn is just going to have to learn to live with, I'm afraid, because she's got a lot of work ahead of her. I do mention this, though, because it is her work ethic among many of her characteristics that are important so that we can receive timely decisions by the state Supreme Court. That takes work, and I think we have a real workhorse here who I am so proud to appoint to this position. Justice Whitener, I'd like to shake your hand, but right now I want to be socially and legally connected with you, and I look forward to that.
Thank you. Good afternoon. First, I would like to thank Governor Inslee for giving me this wonderful opportunity to serve on our state's highest court. Thank you. I stand before you the product of hard work and mentorship. As a result, there are too many people to thank in the time that I have. However, I must thank my spouse, and you've heard retired Command Sergeant Major and Attorney Lynn Rainey, for her unconditional love and continued support. I also thank Justice Charles Wiggins for his many years of exemplary service to the legal profession and the judiciary. It is truly an honor to be appointed to the seat that he held. I would be remiss if I did not speak to students, as I teach and mentor many of them, from elementary school all the way up to new judicial officers at Judicial College. I also teach a street law civics class at Lincoln High School in Tacoma. Our class schedule this semester was interrupted due to the coronavirus outbreak. I know the practice of social distancing can make us feel isolated and disconnected from each other, but it is a necessity so that all Washingtonians can be safe. I want you, the students, to know just as others believed in me, I believe in you. So continue to study and continue to be safe. I do miss my weekly class sessions with you, however. To the people of the state of Washington, we are showing the world that Washingtonians are united people. We may have differences, but we are not truly different. Our similarities outweigh our differences. We are one, and this pandemic will not defeat us. Finally, I look forward to serving with the esteemed Washington Supreme Court justices under the leadership of Chief Justice Deborah Stevens. Even though for the immediate future, I'll be joining them in the virtual work environment, I'll be joining you soon. Thank you, Governor Inslee, again for this historic appointment, and thank you for everyone who has made it possible.
Judge White, would you like to stay at the podium? I will happy for the justice or myself take questions.
Okay, first question, we're going to go to Alexis Krell with the News Tribune.
Your Honor, I'd like to know what the challenges you see the justice system facing during the pandemic and what challenges you think courts are going to be facing when they resume normal operations.
Well, one of the challenges we're presently facing is a challenge that has always been there, and that is lack of funding. However, I was appointed to the Office of Civil Legal Aid, and I do know that a lot of work has been done by that organization to make sure that individuals who do not have funding for an attorney, who do not have funding in regards to access to the courts, have a place where they can get information to hold them over this time period. In regards to what sort of issues we will be looking at going forward, I think there are a lot of benefits that we will come out of this pandemic with, and that is utilizing technology more efficiently to serve the community that we serve.
Okay. Next question comes from Austin Jenkins with Northwest News Network.
Hi, Judge Whitener, and congratulations. Nice to see you again.
Thank you.
Virtually. I know that you have had a tremendous focus throughout your career on equity and diversity and inclusiveness, and you've talked about the importance of trust in the court systems and the fact that courts need to reflect the communities they serve. How do you see your role as a Supreme Court justice in advancing that work that you have done in the Superior Court and in other realms?
Well, I think my background is so diverse and so varied that I represent just about every type of individual that could possibly come before the court. Prior to being appointed to the Pierce County Superior Court, I was a Board of Industrial Insurance Appeals judge. And my run, meaning where I would go to have hearings, was in Eastern Washington. So you would have this island girl heading out to Wenatchee, Moses Lake, Winthrop, Okanagan County, Spokane, Yakima, and I was made to feel welcome and at home, because there really wasn't any difference with how they treated me or what they wanted from me than I got from Western Washington, so to say. So as far as equity and inclusion, it does not matter where you are or who you're dealing with. What we are to be concerned about is the impact our actions have on others. And that has always been my focus, and I hope I can continue doing that as well.
For you, Justice, it comes from Essex Porter with Cairo 7.
Yes, Justice.
We lost
Would
you.
like to ask, in this time of trying to reopen and make sure that it is safe for everyone,
Unfortunately, I'm not getting your question. You can try again.
Hi there, are you hearing me now?
I can.
Yes, I would like to ask, as our governments move toward reopening society in the wake of this COVID-19, I am wondering what you think of the kind of tracking and tracing and testing that may need to be done so that we can safely reopen. It seems like it could be unprecedented and could have implications for medical privacy. How do you approach what we may need to do in order to reopen safely?
Well, first of all, you have to remember, I am in the legal sphere, not the medical sphere. In addition to which, it sounds like the way you formulated your question, it is likely to be something that is going to come before the court that I will be swearing into. So at this time, I cannot answer that question in regards to what issues may come before the court on that. What I do know is when the pandemic is over, our courts have now been looking at technology. Access to our courts and access to the justice system is paramount and at the forefront of our minds. And we will do whatever it takes to make sure that our courts remain a place where people can come and have their cases heard impartially and create a safe environment for them as well.
Great. I think we'll transition now to the governor for other media questions.
Thank you.
Next question comes from Rachel with AP.
Governor, what details of timelines under the regional pact announced today with Oregon and California? And also, what do you make of the president's tweets today where he was asserting that ultimately it wasn't up to the governors on when to open up the state, that it would come from the federal government? Is there any thought to coordinating with the White House as it relates to our particular, when it comes to lifting our restrictions?
Well, of course, we will talk to the administration as we do routinely. I talk to the vice president fairly regularly. He called me day before yesterday. I was on a call with other governors with him today. So we have a lot of communications with the White House. That's a very healthy thing. I want to thank the vice president for being available to us. But as far as who has the legal authority to make decisions about the Stay Home, Stay Healthy initiative, which I issued as governor of the state of Washington, there really is no question about that. That is in the singular purview of the state of Washington and the governor of the state of Washington. So there is no legal authority that would give any president of any party the ability to countermand a health-based decision that is issued pursuant to Washington state law. So our Stay Home, Stay Healthy initiative has been successful in a couple ways. One, people are abiding by it. That's why we're having considerable success. And number two, it is issued pursuant to Washington state law, and no president can countermand that. So that decision will remain with me as governor, and we see no authority from any source that would give the president the ability to countermand that decision. Now, the president could make additional decisions of his own, but he cannot countermand the decision that we have under Washington state law. Your first question, you broke up a little, Rachel. Could you try that one again?
Sure thing. Can you hear me now, Governor?
Yes.
Okay. When might we see specific details of timelines under the regional pact that was announced today with Oregon and California? I think I heard that the governor of California might have some details tomorrow. Would we expect that sort of time frame as well?
We don't have any specific date in mind at this moment, and I'm glad to be able to have basically a statement of broad principles that will abide across the West Coast. And those basic principles are: we know we have to have measures of testing and contact tracing and the ability to come out of this in a rational, thoughtful, scientifically based way. And I think that those principles were abided by with this agreement that you saw today. But we don't have any specific timelines to offer you in this regard. Obviously, our order is good at the moment through May 4th, and states will retain the ability to pick their particular dates. But I am pleased that we are moving as a region to basic principles so that we can be as coordinated as possible. I'm happy to have this, this position.
Next question comes from Joe with the Seattle Times.
Governor, two-part question here about your coordination. First, what are the clear indicators for communities to restart public life and business that you're looking at? And second, how much of your effort has been informed by the previous announcement that New York and New Jersey and some East Coast states would do this?
We were not related to what the East Coast was doing. We've been working on these things in the West Coast on our own initiative, and so we were happy to basically coincidentally announce them on the same day. So it's something we've been working on for some time, and we'll continue to work with other West Coast states. The first part of your question, of course, eluded me. What was your first question?
Oh, in terms of, I believe your statement said you're looking for clear indicators for communities.
Yes, thank you.
What are you looking at?
So there are two things that we need to see going forward. Number one, the rate of infection has to be low enough that we know that it's not going to simply rebound if we continue with the second step, which I'll describe. So the rate of infection, the rate of fatalities, the infection rate per capita, the hospitalization with COVID-like symptoms per capita, the percentage of positive tests, all of those things have to be low enough to give us confidence that we can have a second part strategy to keep that rebound from happening. That's number one. The second step is we have to have confidence that our testing and contact tracing protocols are scientifically based enough and robust enough and resourced well enough that we will be able to keep a lid on when we do have a sporadic infection take place. And we are working on that right now. So we are working on a plan to increase our testing capacity literally on a daily basis. And we have plans to do that all the way through the supply chain, from the test swabs to the vials, to the transport medium, to the reagents, to the analyzing machines. And we are currently looking at new ways to dramatically boost the analytical capability as well. We're making progress on some of the test kits. We just recently got in thousands of the swabs that are now literally, I think, today or tomorrow being shipped to various long-term care facilities that so need them. But we also need a contact tracing program so that if we get a sporadic positive hit in a certain location, we can surround that person with anyone they've had a contact with and get them into isolation as quickly as humanly possible. So we are building up our number of people, you might call it the minute men and women that we need to be able to get this contact tracing work done. And we're developing that plan to get that done right now.
Next question comes from Drew with King 5.
Good afternoon, Governor. On the issue of the inmates being released, we heard up to 950 may be getting out soon because of this. Advocates and family members say that's not nearly enough to create the social distancing we need inside the facilities. Are there other measures being taken to somehow spread these folks out? And if we see more infections, do you expect to see more releases, perhaps at other institutions?
Well, first off, the fact that family members are concerned about their loved ones who are incarcerated, we understand that. And that's why we're taking many steps, not just an early release of some of these nonviolent offenders. I'll just go through some of the list of the things that are being done. I issued an emergency proclamation which waived certain requirements to be incarcerated who'd violated terms of their parole so we could keep the numbers down in our facilities. We have increased screening, testing, and disease control guidelines that are consistent with the CDC requirements. We early eliminated visitation at the Department of Corrections in order to prevent the infections going into the facilities. Now, this is anxiety producing for the families. I can understand that because they can't see physically their family members, but it is a necessary step to reduce the rates of infection. We have begun screening of all new inmates using screening questions and temperature checks. The DOC has reduced the intra-system transfer from facility to facility and reduced it fairly significantly. They've implemented guidelines for personal protection equipment for staff, and they have bolstered cleaning for the DOC facilities. They've issued new hygiene supplies to the incarcerated individuals and teaching them the social distancing technique that, frankly, all of us need to be involved in. And they are also isolating, both with singular isolation of people who have tested positive, but also embraced what's called cohort isolation of people in the pod that has been affected, so that only about 3 people might be in a unit, so they're not exposed to hundreds of people in the dormitory-like setting. The point I just referenced these is that there's a lot of work going on besides the early release protocols, and that's the right thing to do, and we're doing it. The court, besides the court ordering this to be done, it's something we've been working on now for weeks and months to try to reduce the risk to people in these prisons. We do have to recognize this, though. Everyone in the state of Washington is at some risk for this today. And no one is going to have it totally eliminated. And all of us should pitch in to try to reduce it. That's what we're doing for our incarcerated individuals.
Next question comes from Jim with the spokesman review.
Governor, on the multi-state pact that you have, from a regional standpoint, will you be coordinating with Governor Little of Idaho, the other state on the other border, which has a significant amount of contact back and forth across that border on the east side? If not, how will you prevent COVID-19 from cropping up in eastern Washington?
Well, we haven't had a chance to talk to Governor Idaho yet. I understand that he's having some controversy with his plans in Idaho, so he may have that issue he's got to work through so that we could talk to him. I see no reason not to do that. This is just a matter of these 3 West Coast governors have worked together on so many things. It's just a matter of we're used to doing that. But when he gets Idaho in a little more consensus position, be happy to talk to him.
We're going to try Essex with Cairo again now that we're in the other portion of the Q&A.
Yes, thank you, Governor. Does this agreement with the other states mean that there will now be uniform definitions of what is an essential business? Because now the different states have different definitions of which businesses are essential.
Not necessarily. I think that this pact is more forward-looking than backward-looking. This pact is about what do we do after we reduce some of our social distancing, stay-home initiatives. It's more of the issue of how are we going to have as consistent as we can testing and contact tracing initiatives. It's more of a forward-looking proposal, and I'm looking forward to that. Now, I do want to reiterate this, and it's important for people to realize this. In order for any of these 3 states to be successful, we simply have to have increased products available with which to do this testing. This is absolutely critical. We are all 3 governors working as hard as we can to get testing swabs, to get viral transport medium, to get reagents for the analysis. And we literally are calling manufacturers around the world to try to obtain these products. And we've had some success. In the last few days, we've had some real hits on getting thousands of swabs that we need. But we need to realize that the demand for testing is going to go up by several fold after we get through our social distancing, because we have to be able to test people and people around them who have sporadic outbreaks if that happens. We need to test people in the food services industry, for instance, and that need is going to increase, not decrease. And that's why our nation needs a very strong mobilization plan to mobilize the industrial base in the United States to make all of these products. Now, there is a start, and I spoke to Admiral Polachek about this weekend, and that is starting, and we are glad to see that. But it needs to accelerate to the extent humanly possible so that everyone can get access to these resources.
Next question comes from Jerry with the Everett Herald.
Governor, I wanted to go back to the plan you filed with the Supreme Court today. 3 related questions to it. I wondered first, when do you foresee releases beginning I've been told there's none today, so I'm wondering why are there none today under this plan? And will the Department of Corrections contact the victims and witnesses who are enrolled in the notification program before any of the individuals who are released early, if they've signed up?
Well, it's going to be probably the first group in a matter of a few days. You have to identify the people. You have to give them the rudimentary ways to leave the facility. We'd like to do whatever we can to help them be in a healthy environment when they leave. There are a group of the people who will be released on an early release program that will still be monitored, probably with something like an ankle bracelet, and finding out where they're going to go takes some time. But we think the first group would be in a matter of days. That's what we're aiming for. In order to accomplish that, there simply is not time to do victim notification and negotiation to comply with the Supreme Court order. So these are emergency decisions. They are pursuant to order of the state Supreme Court, and we are moving as quickly as possible to be in compliance with that and what is good public policy.
More questions? Okay, next we go to Hannah Scott with Cairo Radio.
Governor, you mentioned the need for contact tracing before we get to the point of where we can reopen. I'm curious, do you support the research going on right now with Trevor Bedford and NextTrace to use an app to contact trace for COVID-19?
Well, if you're referring to the situation where your cell phone could advise you if you've been close to somebody else's cell phone who is positive, is that what you're referring to, or some other apparatus?
So that's what I'm referring to.
Yeah. Well, first off, I haven't seen the details of this proposal. It seems to me it may be possible to do that without violating people's privacy if there are assurances that if I'm A and I'm advised that I've been close to somebody B who had the virus, as long as we make sure I'm not told who B was, just simply that I've been close to someone, that probably would not violate anybody's privacy. So if that is capable of happening, to me, it might make sense, and it's something that we should look at. And I think the attitude to this is we ought to look at creative solutions to this problem and really dive down to the details. And the reason I say that is what I've found is technology can be anxiety producing, and if you look at it really closely, maybe some of that anxiety wasn't really necessary. You just got to look at it really closely. So I would say, like to look at what this might do. Seems to me there might be a way to do this without violating anyone's privacy, and let's take a look at it.
Next question comes from Tom with Northwest News Network.
Governor, can we just follow up one more time on the Western States Pact? I wanted to make sure I understood the practical effects in terms of whether there's a possibility that Washington State's reopening might be delayed by having to wait for Oregon or California to get all their ducks in a row, and particularly in the case of California, has 40 million people.
No, I don't think there's a reason to think that's a risk. This is a general pact about the principles that apply, but they may apply at a different date depending where every state is in their curve, in their data, in their infection rate, in the ability to have contact tracing. If one state can get contact tracing and adequate testing earlier than another, there wouldn't be any reason to delay that state. But it is a pact to have those principles being applied as depending on the circumstances of each state. So I can only think this is going to help accelerate our effort, in part because we can share resources and we can share procurement strategies. And we can share advice, frankly, how to implement these things. So if anything, it's going to hasten it.
Next one comes from Keith with Como.
Governor, you were talking about still your date as far as the end of stay home, stay healthy. Is there consideration you may start to ease some of the restrictions like on home construction prior to that date? Or are you going to have to extend it? Your graphs talk about going to the end of May for those unintended deaths if people go back to close contact.
Well, we make decisions based on the data on a daily basis. At the moment, this order is good through May 4th, and that's the decision we have made. That could change. It could be longer. I suppose possibly it could be shorter, but I have no intention doing that right now. It seems like the data we have would suggest what we've done or made good decisions so far, and they may have to go longer, and it depends on what the data will show as we get closer to May 4th. When we make that decision, it could possibly be that some industries open faster than others. That's a possibility. It's a possibility that we would all be in the same date at a later date. That is a possibility. But it probably doesn't do us a lot of good just ruminating on possibilities. We got to focus on what we need to today, which is stay home and stay healthy. Again, I want to thank Washingtonians with huge numbers of people who are fulfilling that request, and that's why we're having some success. But I want to reiterate, there is no reason to believe we're done with this, and if people decide to just go back and party like it was 2015, we're going to have a relapse of this thing and maybe be longer getting back to our industrial base. So we got to keep sticking to this business.
Last question, and I think we're going to have David Postman answer some additional questions about the California, Oregon work we're doing. But last question for the governor.
Final question, we go to Camilla with KPTV.
Hi, Governor. You answered many of the questions regarding the Western States Pact. Can you address the order you issued today to protect high-risk workers and what that means?
Thank you for that question. This is an important issue. You know, we know that this virus is not an equal opportunity threat. On a percentage basis, essentially anyone could potentially be a victim. And so all of us have a personal interest in staying home and staying healthy. But the big majority of its victims are older folks, my age, for instance, and those with underlying health conditions. So we have issued an order basically to add an extra layer of protection for folks in those conditions, to make sure that if you can't be accommodated at the job site, to make sure you're safe, that you'd have the ability not to be on the job and come back and not lose your job and use your benefits while you're not on the job. So the first situation was to give people an opportunity to work with their employee to get in a better position so they're not so exposed. If that is impossible and if they are not able to work, this will guarantee folks over the age of 65 and those with compromised health systems the ability to get your job back when we get back to normal conditions. And this is important because, frankly, if we can wrap our arms, put a bubble around people of this ilk, of this age and condition, we're going to reduce fatality rates, well more than half. So this is a group we got to particularly embrace right now, and we did so by this order to protect their work rights. With that, I want to thank everyone, and wash your hands, please. Thank you.
So now David Postman, we'll have David talk about the work with California.